Hey gang, it's Wes. In this video, we're going to be discussing something that I'm actually getting a lot more questions about lately. It's more of an intermediate art topic, meaning that, while beginners can hear about it and think about it, and advanced painters are kind of very well versed in it, it's one of those things that can really level up your art to the next level because it's something that's not necessarily obvious if you don't know what you're looking for. And that is edge control. So in this video, we're going to be discussing what do we mean when we say edges on a visual spectrum or an image. And then we're going to just give some helpful tips and tricks on the best places to use the most popular type of edges, ways to think about it, and hopefully some things that you can take with you to really start bringing your art to the next level. So without further ado, we got a lot to cover. Let's get to it. Edges. It's something that you always hear about in art school or like critiques of artwork, or if you read any like write-ups of your favorite painters or something, you may see this thing come up a lot, and they talk about the use of edges and their edge control. What does that really mean? So before we get too far into this, I want to say I'm no master of edge control. In fact, I would say that it's the one area that I think my artwork needs the most work on. There's quite a few of those areas, but really I'm trying my best lately to be way more aware of my edges in regards to my paintings, because I think they have a huge influence on the finished product. They really do. And in the intro, I talked about how this is more of an intermediate thing. So where it gets interesting is how much emphasis should you put on this. We're going to define what edges are momentarily, and I'm going to discuss kind of the three main ones. Then we're going to see some time-lapse footage of a painting I'm working on, and it's based off a photo reference from Graphit Studio, and the image is right here. A beautiful look. It has really deep blues, really nice greens, very good storytelling in this, and I thought it was kind of a perfect opportunity to talk about edges, because it's one of those rare instances to where I saw the image, I see the stock image, and I see the painting, the finished painting in my head almost immediately. And a lot of that has to do with how I would handle these edges. So we're going to define what edges are, just so we kind of are very clear going forward what it means. I do want to talk about some tips and tricks as far as edges and edge control. And then we're going to watch the time lapse, take a look at the kind of quote-unquote finished painting, as it were. We're going to discuss the edges. We're going to look at it, and we're going to really design our edges in a way that makes for the best painting possible. So to get this thing started, I do want to define what we mean by edges. Now, it might seem obvious, but there's actually three types of edges I want to talk about. So I'm going to put up a graphic up here, and I'm going to put each kind of definition for what our edges are going to be while we cover them. So the first one, and kind of the most popular one, I would say, is going to be your hard edge or your sharp edge. You can kind of, whatever you feel like calling it, people kind of know what this is. So this really can be defined, at least for me, as a sharp or immediate change between colors or values in a painting. The thing is, our brains as humans are kind of hardwired to notice patterns, and we're hardwired to notice details, or what I would consider a line. Like, we're very good at directing our eyesight to stuff like that. They show the detail of things, and our eyes just want to know what's going on all the time and process that information to our brain. So these are the most effective at like designing shapes or silhouettes of a painting. So you ever hear an art critique about something having like a graphic read, or hey, is this easy to parse? Is this easy to look at? Is it easy to tell what's going on? They're probably talking about shapes, and shapes are made with hard edges. So this is really about designing and composition. So boxes, triangles, very sharp, not very nuanced, but very easy to decipher symbols. And that could be for anything. Really, whenever I think of hard edges, I think of a silhouette of a subject. And this piece actually has a really nice focal point that you can do a perfect silhouette of, and then have everything else be nice and painterly around it, but she is going to be the star of the show. Your shapes are going to create these edges, and how they interconnect with each other ends up becoming your composition. That's the pattern I've noticed lately. So just a quick way to remember this is like a hard edge equals a focal point. Our eyes are going to naturally go there, so it's going to be a focal point whether you like it or not. If you just remember hard edge equals focal point, that already is going to start making you a step above maybe some of your peers, or even where your own abilities are. You're going to start leveling that up because you're going to start looking at your picture differently. So the second main edge type that we are going to discuss are your soft edges. So kind of obvious, if you have hard edges, you also have to have soft edges. As the name implies, they're softer, they're smudgier than the kind of the hard edge counterparts, but they're perfect for defining forms. So it's your transitions between light and dark and how smooth they are that give a sense of weight and form. So here's the thing about soft edges. There are still edges. This doesn't mean everything's cloudy and muddy, and it doesn't necessarily have to work like that. You can still have nice, refined, soft edges. So it's not as razor blade sharp as our hard edges are, okay? Yeah, doing clouds and stuff, you would think clouds would just be nothing but soft edges, but that's not true. Maybe the inside of the cloud could be a majority soft edges, but that outside and where it actually kind of entangles with the sky around it could very much be a hard edge. However, I bring up soft edges because a vast majority of all of your paintings should be made of soft edges. And we'll talk about that why here in a little bit when we talk about the kind of the tips and tricks. And this is my opinion, and that's another one of my tips and tricks. So, but trust me, put down the fire that you're about to put onto your keyboard. Soft edges are very important. Very important. They are kind of mission critical to make sure that you have a strong piece. And it really talks about the relationship of light and shadow in where the light is hitting and how smooth that transition happens. And that's all defined by your soft edges. So just as the simple beeline thing, a soft edge should be a majority of your piece, period. Like, start there and then you can adjust later. So now my favorite one, we're gonna define the third one, and this is kind of the moneymaker. In my opinion, this is what separates painting, whether it's digital or traditional or whatever, from any other art form, and that's lost edges. So lost edges, a lot of people will think, oh, that just means super soft edges. And it can, but really the way I think about this is a lost edge should be an area where the viewer expects an edge. So maybe something's in the foreground and something's in the background, and there should be a separation there. But if the values match, bridge them together. There's no edge. It seems really weird and it seems almost counterintuitive, but I promise you, if you go in and you see, let's say you have an object and it makes a cast shadow, and the cast shadow connects to the background, and the background is the same value, maybe not the same color, but the same value as your cast shadow in your background, make it to where those two things connect. There's a saying I always say to myself about lost edges: bridge the gap. Literally, if there's two things and they're pretty close in value, get rid of the edge. Just get rid of it. You'll be amazed at how much your mind fills in the blanks. And really what this is, lost edges, since people are expecting an edge, but they don't see one, they look at it and something's intriguing about this image. Oh, there's something going on here. Like, you're going to draw in the viewer because now they have to work for their meal. Their meal being the satisfied feeling of looking at a beautiful image. With lost edges, they have to put in a little bit of effort, but that's good, and that's what we want because that brings in interest to the viewer. So you can start seeing how if you start mixing your hard edges and your soft edges with lost edges, you can start really manipulating where people's eyes are looking. And that's why I consider this kind of the intermediate level. I know I've said this before, but this is one of those things that you can think about that might be as big of a bang for your buck effect as like a composition or your values. If that stuff's pretty on point and you really want to take things to that next level, focus on these 3 type of edge types, okay? So with that being said, with us kind of defining what these edges are, let's go ahead and take a look at the time lapse. So I have a little bits of a quick time lapse just to kind of set things up, which I'm going to talk about the 3 helpful tips whenever we see this. And then we're going to actually look at a little bit more real-time painting just for a few minutes, just to discuss what the edges are going to do and what I'm thinking. Then you're going to see some more time lapse and then the finished piece. This will hopefully give a good overview of how I think about edges, and also some of these tips might be helpful for you. So let's roll that, beautiful bean footage and show the quick time lapse. So this first part is just putting in the basic colors and the basic values and things like that. I'm not even really worried about how it looks right now. I just want to make sure that my general shapes are in proportion to one another. And, I just kind of get something that starts to resemble the image. At this point, it's kind of nice because I quote unquote see the image already because I literally see the photo that I'm basing this off of. But I don't quite see it as the painting that I have in my head yet. But you got to build it. You know what I mean? You can't get up the ladder without having rungs on it. So you have to build the thing up, then you can see it. At this point, I'm actually not thinking about edges all that much. I'm just really thinking about getting my values in there, and edges are something that comes later. That's one of my tips, but we'll talk about that here momentarily. I just wanted to show the quick place of how we got to where we are as far as this. This, I want to say, part only took about 45 minutes or so. So it sped up quite a bit, but yeah, effective. Just get something on the canvas. It's no big deal. You can always change it. And plus, since this is about edges, that comes near the end, so we have to get there first. If that makes sense. But yeah, with that being said, let me talk about these 3 tips while you see some more kind of refined time-lapse footage, and then we'll go in and start doing a few real-time things, taking some real-time notes, zooming in and out, talking about it. Then we'll do more time-lapse, then we'll see the finished piece. So the 3 main tips that I have for you. So do your edge passes last. Think of it as a finishing touch. And the reason why, we only have so much mental bandwidth, as human beings. We can only focus on so many things at a time, right? So trying to juggle your edges while you're working on composition, while you have to pick your colors, while you're making sure your values work, while you make sure your brushes are that's too much. Don't kill yourself to get to the grand finale. Each step, the more and more I paint, the more I work with clients, I'm finding that if I separate out my areas and my just steps for each painting into replicable steps, they turn out better just because I can only focus on that 1 or maybe 2 things at a time. And it really does help because it lets me focus on that, and then once those are done, they're done. I don't really have to think about it anymore unless something drastic happens. But do the edges last? Yeah, you have that mental bandwidth. Use it to the best of your ability. It's going to be hard to juggle so many things. Edges are meant to tie things together. It's to make the whole piece look cohesive. So what better time to do that than at the very end as a finishing touch? Kind of mentally have it in your mind oh, well, this is the focal point, so it's going to be sharp. Oh, this is the background, so I might blend it out a little bit. You can think of stuff like that, but don't really go in and mess with those edges until the very, very end. And I think you're going to be happier with the result. So, tip number 2, mix and match your edges. So if there's certain areas that look boring, let's say you flatten out the piece, you have it kind of on one layer, you're doing some painting stuff, the focal point looks good, maybe the background's a little not great anymore because you kind of smudged it out too much, but you don't want to introduce hard edges again. What can you do? You can sprinkle in other edges in areas where they're not quite supposed to be. And a perfect example of this is, I'm a big fan, I think, like everyone is, of Frank Frazetta. What Frank Frazetta did, he does some incredible stuff with edges. And he has such clear, beautiful paintings that what he'll do is, especially within his soft edges of the backgrounds, what he does is he makes it a contrasted hard edge by changing the tone and the temperature of the paint. So you're going to see these beautiful nuances in, like, let's say a red kind of fiery background. He's going to put hits of cyan in there. He's going to put the cooler hits of gray. He's going to put these things here to really shake up and bring interest to those areas that could just be kind of lifeless. So think about that. Think about how you can utilize your knowledge of these edges and edge types. And it doesn't just have to be, I'm going to use my sharp brush, or I'm going to use my cloud brush, or I'm going to use this. Think of it in as it pertains to values, as it pertains to color or hue or saturation even. You can, anything can, if it's a contrast to your eye, it's going to make an edge. So keep that in mind. But the last one, and in my opinion, probably the most important one, break all of these rules. Break every single one of them. I will say with edges, they kind of exist for a reason, and the reason why we think about these is because it kind of works the way we intend it to. But art is subjective. It's subjective to how you feel and how you want to paint. And also, it's up to the audience. The audience is going to infer or read into whatever you paint. So it's your job as the painter to paint it, and it's their job as the viewer to view it. It sounds ridiculous, but it's kind of true. You can have the intent of controlling the edges where you want them. So if you want a weird lost edge at the very edge of a sharp, like you have some sharp hard edges for your focal point, and then you just want to smear one of those edges completely out. Who cares, right? Or like a little divot almost of like, it looks like you got your oil brush and like smudged it against it. Do it. Because what people are going to look at is that. That brings in contrast. That brings in variety. Break every rule we've established. I think what you're going to find is that's where you start finding what your style is and what you really enjoy painting and what you really enjoy producing. Because how people handle edges, in my opinion, is the same thing as how a musician plays an instrument. Sure, you can have somebody like Paul McCartney play the guitar, but Paul McCartney plays the guitar way different than Zakk Wylde does. They both play guitars, they both have 6 strings, the notes don't change, but because of the feel, because of the vibrato, because of the way they handle the instrument, it sounds completely different. Same thing with painting. Because of how you handle your edges and your mix of saturation and color and value, all of these things come together and start developing your style. So the best thing about these rules is you can break them. That's going to be where you find the really exciting stuff and the stuff that I think is going to kickstart your art to go to that next level. But with that being said, let's just watch a little bit of a time lapse. Then I'm going to come in near the end, do some real time talking about it, talk about the edges, do some finishing touches. Then we'll take a look at it. I'll kind of circle around what's going on, and then we'll wrap this up. So yeah, let's get to watching the video. So our image is looking better. It's further along, and now I think it's time to really start honing in on the edges. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hop over to the canvas. We're going to stay in real time, and I'm going to show you what my thought process is before we do a little time lapse to round out the episode. So let me go to, there we go. So the first thing I want to focus on, let me bring up PureRef here. Whenever I zoom out quite a bit, the first thing I notice is, of course, the two main areas are going to have the hard edges, kind of the sharper edges. Going to be, of course, our main focal point of this lady right here. And then we have a gentleman right here with, you know, some sharper edges around here, kind of the staff going in. And we kind of started that, but not to the limit that we kind of want to push it, I guess. You'll also notice there's some folds in the cloth and everything. This could be a cool place to do some edges of some hard edges right here, and then maybe kind of soften out the edge as it goes down to give that form, that sense of the cloth. And really, I want to make my razor sharp edges right here, the silhouette of the face against the tarp or the tent of the backdrop. That right here, you can see it's already a little harder edge than everything else, but I really want to get in there and render and really sharpen up like razor blade. I actually have a brush in my 2023 brush pack called let me get it right here, Wes Razor Blade, and that's what it's made for. Is it's literally made to do very, very, very sharp, like pixel lasso tool boxed sharp edges. So I'm thinking this area is going to be hard edge. I like this staying a hard edge because it makes a cool silhouette shape. This we can start softening the edge a little bit just because it's further back, it's going to be more out of focus. And that brings us to, and maybe we can sharpen maybe something over here, maybe the staff, maybe those edges. And that might be good. So what I'm doing for the soft edges, what I'm thinking is the further away we get from our focal point, the softer the edges are going to be, okay? So as I move this way, the edges are going to get more and more cloudy, blurred out. Now that doesn't mean you won't see brush strokes, but there's not going to be intrinsic detail there, okay? And we'll do the same thing. Yeah, we'll do the same thing, kind of going this way, kind of this way. You can see I've already abstracted out some of these shapes, but like the smoke, we're going to keep fairly unrendered. I might bring this lightness back into here, but other than that, just kind of touch up, kind of puffy up those, almost make it cloud-like. So yeah, we can kind of hit those with a smooth edge, the soft edge. But here's the real kicker, my lost edges. Remember how earlier we talked about bridging the gap? My goal is to actually make a subconscious beeline from one corner of the canvas and go to the other, or one side I should say, of the canvas to the other side of the canvas uninterrupted. What I mean by that, I want, if everything could start, let's say like right here, or maybe even right here, can I find values that are connected in such a way that I can draw a straight or a consistent line all the way through? So if it's like, let me get, I know it's going to be kind of an ugly color, but we're going to do it. So if I had this and I see maybe if I bridge this over here, it can maybe come up here, or actually come down here. We come up, we come through, maybe we come through down here, and then either down here and up into here, something like that, or kind of go this route. To where all of the values are going to match, to that way bridge the gap. So perfect example, if I get rid of this one's essentially almost bridged. So I can grab the one color, I'm on my razor blade. I was wondering why it was so sharp. And see, it's funny because in the main picture, this is actually the tie of the back of her hood. But in the image, I'm blending it into here. And that makes a very strong, very good point that I want to bring up. And I'm going to get big so we can talk about this. Paintings are not photographs. They're not. It's a whole different thing. It's a whole different thing. Embrace things like edges and make your thing a painting. Nothing wrong with photography. It's a whole different art form that I know next to nothing about. Not skilled enough to do it. I don't know about it. What I do know about is painting. Embrace what makes it emotive and evocative and emotional. And a lot of that is going to be the nuances for your edges. So change the photo, change the reference, who cares? Yeah, just follow your gut, you know? But, so that same thing applies. That's one of the changes we can make. And see, already that looks pretty cool, but then even if we have something maybe right here, and kind of lose these edges. And maybe, you know, lose these edges. See, that can kind of come up, but then here you have something similar. You kind of lose that edge into here. And this edge into here. Do some hard edges there. But then this, maybe come down here. Do you see what I mean? Now there's kind of a through line. Between, we can go essentially uninterrupted. If we bring this down, bring this up to there, and there, we can now draw a beeline. From here to, see where to go to, I can, yeah, so I can go from like here to there in one value, one line, and that's going to bring our eye subconsciously. So that's what I'm going to work on in this next step, and then I'm going to have a few little closing thoughts, but other than that, that's what we're going to be doing. So let's hop back to it. And there we have it. So there's our completed edge painting. I'm pretty happy with how this one turned out. You'll notice that I kept going back and forth between blending the edges, making some lost edges, softening some harder edges, and then going over it with kind of that razor blade brush. But this is really, that's all I was considering whenever I was going back and forth, is just how do the edges look? How nuanced are they? Like, are they interesting to look at? Do they make cool shapes? And you'll notice that I also kind of got rid of the photo reference after a while, because honestly it was getting in the way, and I started feeling myself falling into the trap of just trying to go and make the photo, which I just said, photos and paintings are completely different. So you should just scrap your reference after a while and just go off your instinct, and that's gonna be where your kind of subconscious comes through, and you make some really cool decisions that you wouldn't have made if you just were plastered and kind of glued in to that photo reference. But yeah, just mix your edges. It's a lot of fun. You can have a lot of freedom with this, and I think it does a big impact on the final image. And let me know what you think in the comments. If you like what you see, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Also, you can join. I have a membership stuff up now. They get exclusive access to this episode first, and also they get this full image, wallpaper size at 1080p. So yeah, cool incentives there. You get custom chats and all that stuff. Exclusive chat rooms, and you can vote in polls and Q&A and all that stuff. So it's a lot of fun. But that's my time. I hope you learned something. I'm always learning about edges. It's something that I will never get tired of. It's just so much fun to dig into. But if you have any questions, let me know in the comments, and we will talk to you soon. Peace.